Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to our mental health and writing panel. My name is Ariana Townsend, and I'm here today with Quinn. Quinn is an undertaker, legit undertaker, and creator of a horror and history podcast called Mania. He's a writer of mob stories, and we think that might be how you say that word. I write, I don't read, okay? I'm also here with Kota. Kota is the founder of Inked and Grey Press. Their goal is to bring to life stories that need to be told. Their first anthology, The First Stain, will be released in May of 2020. That's super soon. Their current whip is called The Lessons We Keep, which discusses multi-generational trauma and what happens when monsters meet mobsters. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you.
To start us out, we're mostly just going to have a bit of a conversation. I want to ask the question, what has been your most positive mental health moment in your writing journey? And I guess, Quinn, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think in my journey it was kind of just realizing that I had a mental health issue, because for many years I was just constantly undergoing the strain of being very euphoric one day and then very depressive another day, and it extended past adolescence and into my adult life. And at what point was I supposed to realize that this wasn't a normal thing, or that it was okay not to be normal? And not to just call it mood swings. And as soon as I sort of addressed it as the actual problem that it was and the challenge that it was, and was able to look at it more honestly, that was when I was able to kind of really get on top of it, because it's almost like you can't address a problem if you're not being honest with yourself that it's there. So when I was able to realize it's not normal to be incredibly euphoric for 30 minutes and then maybe crying like the next hour and debilitatedly depressed, that was when I was able to kind of take really strong motions and be very analytical about, okay, how am I going to incorporate this challenge into my life and be honest about it and just navigate around it and work with it. And that was ever since I had those first realizations. It's been a great journey.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important too, if I can interject for a moment before we grab Kota's answer, because I like the way that you talked about that it's something that we can incorporate into our lives. It doesn't have to be a thing that we need to censor in ourselves, and it also doesn't need to define us. It can just be, just a piece that we work with. And I really appreciate the way that you put that. Thank you. Kota, what's your most positive mental health moment in your writing?
For me, the most positive moment was when there was a particular scene in The Lessons We Keep that was very close to a true event, and I wanted to get to the point where I can write it out. So I have PTSD with dissociation, so which means I don't remember anything from about the age of 12, 13 prior to. I don't remember my teachers. I don't remember, most everything. So I can't really recount my childhood like everybody else. And what I wanted was I wanted to be able to take that moment that pretty much had caused all of that and write it out how I was told that it had happened. So I wanted to break through this block that I had that just kind of seemed to keep my mental health from being stagnant. We had talked about it for such a long time about what it was, what happened, what I thought happened, what I don't remember, and going through the did it even really happen kind of moments, because I don't remember and I still really don't. So a lot of it is hearsay stories. But when I finally was able to write that moment out from beginning to end, and process and I crack through everything that was there and everything that was built up, and hid it in and wrote that scene from beginning to end. That was a very, very powerful moment for me, because I had built up years upon years upon years just to get to the point where I could even acknowledge that that moment was real and it did happen. So to just, and the fallout was I couldn't, triggered myself, and I knew I was going to do that. At least I had my suspicions, triggered myself by writing it from beginning to end because of everything that came up. And I wasn't able to write for about 8 months after that. But to just be able to actually finish that scene was something so monumental for me that it propelled. And granted, I went down the hole after that and everything else, but it did propel my mental health eons beyond what it would have done if I never had written it, simply because it did break that wall. So for me, in writing that out and putting it into the work in progress, whether it will be in there, but even if I had thought about cutting it out or not, the fact that I was able to just write out that horribly traumatic scene from beginning to end and write it down was probably the most powerful moment in my whole writing career, regardless of if I even ever finish it.
Wow. Thank you. I feel like I can't even follow that up.
I'm sorry.
No. Thank you. Yeah, for me, my struggle is mostly with ADHD, depression, anxiety, the fun side effects that come with that. And so for me, I've written since I was very little, similar to you a little bit. Well, actually, maybe opposite. I remember I started writing because I had a very unhappy family and wasn't in a situation that I wanted to be in. And so I started, I remember my first stories. But yeah, I used them to deal with what was going on in my life. And my first stories, I was 4 years old and I would go sit in detention with my older brother. And I would sit with him and I would write stories for his teacher. And they were all happy family stories. And it was my way of kind of getting that thing I knew was missing and couldn't talk about, I guess, in real life. Yeah. And so that's definitely flipped now. I write a lot darker stories than happy unicorn families. Here's the daddy, here's the mommy, here's all the brothers and sisters sort of thing. But yeah, and so now for me, I think probably my biggest positive piece has been that I've been writing all these years and I can't finish anything. I have that real struggle with getting really excited about a project, getting halfway through, getting distracted by another project, getting halfway through. I have the giant lockbox of stuff that I've just never been able to bring myself to finish. And so probably my biggest positive breakthrough was just typing the end on a manuscript that I actually wanted to put out there and see what happened with it. So yeah, I remember that was a really, really big moment for me. And it took me years to get there and it took a lot of commitment. I was raising young kids at the time. I was working full time. I was volunteering. I was doing a lot of different things. And it took a lot of mental effort to make myself show up every day and just keep going with that story. So for me, it was just kind of getting on top of that and probably having one of my first biggest victories just in life in general. I'm a phase outer. If I don't have somebody on the outside telling me, show up to work at this time, you can go home at this time. If I don't have that sort of structure in my life, I don't tend to follow through on things. And so that was big. And then since that moment, I've had a bigger handle on my life in general, not just my writing life, but being able to finish things and do stuff. So yeah, writing has healed me a lot, I think, too, as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, finishing things is one of the hardest things a lot. It's something I think everybody can relate to. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, oh, sorry.
No, go for it. Please.
Well, I think it's really interesting because writing is sort of like just a natural path to healing for, I think, a lot of people. And I think one of the reasons why is because a lot of people who have mental illness are a little bit more creative. There's like there's some studies that kind of show there's a correlation with people who are depressed and people who have higher intellect or higher creativity, that they tend to have greater propensities for mental illness. And so if you're thinking a lot and you're constantly overanalyzing things, it's natural, I think, to want to write. And so it's kind of synchronistic, I think, and very natural. And to put the end on something is is sort of symbolic of being able to kind of sort out your thoughts, which of course are kind of like the root of all those problems to begin with. And yeah, to show mastery over a story or a particular narrative is almost like kind of exemplifying to yourself, showing mastery over your own thought process. And I think that can be directly applied to just how you think in everyday life, whether you're resolving a situation with a relationship or just a challenge outside of art. It really is something that can be directly applied, to every facet of our lives, and it's so powerful.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of with writing too, that it also tends to attract people that have things they want to work out. I am personally, I know this sounds weird, of the opinion that all of us struggle with mental health. That I don't think there's anyone who actually has an exception that can say, I mean, maybe there are some glorious unicorns out there who don't struggle with that. But I'm pretty sure if you talk to most people nowadays, especially in this revival that we're having in the world where it's becoming acceptable to talk about our mental health and to be honest and forthcoming about those things, that more and more people are being drawn to creative outlets where they can process stuff that's happened. And I know for me too, it's like I throw my characters into similar situations that I've been in. And it's almost like this raw energy of just, I can take what I couldn't change from my past and I can change it on the page. I can make that better. I can walk away from the bad relationships. I can, and it's like I can empower myself things in my characters. And I didn't consciously understand that's what I was doing for a very long time. But I remember reading something once, I think it's Lisa Cron's Story Genius or something, that's why we read, is to empathize and see different things. And I look back at my own writing and realized, yeah, that's totally what I've done, is I've taken all these situations in my life that I didn't quite get, and I let my subconscious work on releasing those things I wish I could have done.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of what's in the story that I'm writing now. I mean, granted, I've stuck a lot of magic in it, and things like that, but the magic system does center around emotion as a weapon, physically and metaphysically as well. So it kind of took that lack of control that I had, and I stuck it in a magic system, and said, well, here's, I wish there were things that I can control. So I made it my magic system. So I think writing does give you a way to control the things we can't control in our own lives. I mean, as part of a lot of coping, some individuals will, we control the things we can, because we do have to feel the need of independence, however big or small that need is. Some people really like structure, and that's their way, to keep their independence and stuff. And some people explicitly like lack of structure because that is something that they can control as well. And I think that we put that into our writing too, whereas because we can control the characters, we can control what happens to them, so that gives us the opportunity to be creative, to flesh things out where we wouldn't have, or, explore different things where we wouldn't normally have that ability to in real life, because we have to be responsible, always make the right decision. There's always so much anxiety about our own actions that, we can just dump all of this into a story and play around with it. It could be anything, an escape. It could be fun. It could be, just somewhere for our mind to maybe not control things, because we have to so much control ourselves in our real lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know with the work in progress that I'm working on right now as well, I'm also experimenting with emotions I can't express in real life. And, just with a lot of rage and anger and things that don't come up productively in functional relationships.
Absolutely.
You can't show up and murder people that have hurt you, but hey,
yes.
When we're talking about old Ukrainian folklore, why not?
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that leads good into, I want to talk about a little bit why it's important for writers to take care of their mental health.
Well,
when do you want to?
Yeah, I think that kind of reminds me of what you were saying earlier, where you had this you were kind of proposing that most people have mental health. And I think that's true. I think we all have varying degrees of it. Certainly people who require heavy medication. Maybe some people just need a healthier lifestyle. I think I kind of fall into that category where if I have, diet and sleep and maybe meditation or something like that, I can kind of regulate without medication. I'm very lucky. But in that regard, I think, it's kind of, my answer, I guess, would be kind of strange, and it's not, I'm not trying to be, I don't know. I'm not trying to belittle the question, but I think if it's important for everyone, it's definitely just as important for writers, just because what's more important than well-being,
Yeah.
But I think for writers, if we're trying to really dig into the grit of those kind of personalities that are drawn to writing, I think it's kind of like we were talking about before. If you're prone to overthinking, and that makes really good storytellers, especially fantasy storytellers, like with magic systems, those things can be so complicated. Developing whole lore, just for a single novel. The kind of person that can memorize all these random facts about places and magic systems that just don't exist, and hurl out 200,000 words for that setting, that's the kind of person who's going to, be a bit neurotic about some everyday things and get kind of tripped up over, did I say hi to my barista friendly enough? Like, was I nice enough at the cash register? Like that sort of thing. Like, that's
so glad I'm with
so
you.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think for writers, I think we need to really kind of practice kind of leaving that being over analytical at the page and kind of like just relaxing as much as possible, kind of away from it, kind of just practicing being cool away from it, especially because I also think with writers, because it's such a tough profession, if you're trying to make it or support yourself financially off of it, this feeling of competition ingrained in self-mastery and developing your craft, it just complicates the whole process, because you're constantly, whether you want to or not, comparing yourself to others, you're wondering why your title's not on the shelf or whatever. And that pressure is insane. That is insane pressure. And it's been a big part of my journey to let go of a lot of that. If something big is going to happen, if this is going to come through or not, and just being really dedicated to, I'm putting in the effort and the work and feeling at peace with that. And the rest of my life is just about being content with the rest of my life as it is. And it doesn't have to just be surrounded by writing. Just as we don't need to define ourselves by our mental illness, I don't think we need to define ourselves by our professions even. I think, that maybe that's a little bit taboo to say, but I mean, that's sort of, I feel the same way about, undertaking. I don't define myself by the work I do, even if I do it for 12 hours a day or a podcast that I've had for 2 years. I'm a person who is a part of, like, those pieces are a part of me, but I am not those things.
I love it.
Yeah. No, I had a really, really hard time with that. Because I was telling you before, 19 years in social work is a really long time. I mean, I've been that helping person, for my entire life. I've always been that person, and that it does, being the writer, the social worker, the undertaker, the parent, a lot of times we wear those roles so much that we don't see outside of them, and then things, like Quinn was saying, our anxieties and our doubts kind of beat us down and go, well, am I really that then? Because my title's not there. Am I really a nice person because I rushed my way through greeting the barista in the morning? So all of those things that we are they're both positives and negatives. They are great for using in a story because, let's use the right word and every word counts, right? But then at the same time, all those words don't define us, as, we're more than just the writer, we're more than just the undertaker and things like that. But we do kind of get hung up, on, is that good enough? Is what I did today good enough? Did I write enough words? Are those words good enough? And I think that, to Quinn's point, we are more than that. And I think, something that helps me remember that is having good boundaries. I am a writer from X time to X time, and I'm going to put everything that I have into that during that time, whether it's reading or researching, editing, whatever, and then I'm going to move and I'm going to be a friend during this time, and then a parent, and then, so, and always there will be flexibility. Shit happens, but those boundaries try at least help me remember that I am all of those things as a person and not just one, and especially having that support system that goes, even if you were an asshole to the barista in the morning, because let's be honest, sometimes without coffee, words aren't happening, so to go, and be like, well, there's always tomorrow, there's always whatever, you are a nice person overall, we make bad choices sometimes, and that's okay, that's life. There's nobody out there that's going to say I never made a bad choice because I was in a bad mood, I was having too much anxiety, I wasn't managing my mental health well today, and just cutting yourself some slack that goes, I am human, and that is good enough, and I try, and that is good enough, and sometimes I need a break. And I think I digressed from whatever the question was, but that shit's important.
This is good. And I want to talk about that a little bit too. This is off book here, but because I find for me, my productivity is so linked to my mental health. And so this is something I struggle with. So I'm just going to pick your guys' brains for a moment. But for me, I struggle with that balance between, I know that I have struggles with distraction, focus, finishing things, all of that stuff. And so I have a hard time writing that line between setting 5 million myself muse, which also doesn't work. I would never finish anything. And so how do you guys keep that balance between productivity moving forward? Like, when do you know I need a mental health break versus I'm copping out on something that's uncomfortable?
Maybe Kotas should go first, because I don't think my answer is so bad for this. My answer sucks. I'm the most unrelatable person.
Your really bad sucky answer.
I want the just go. It's
well,
fine.
Because to answer it has to get pretty personal, and
well, that's completely up to you. I will be honest.
No, and I'm okay. I just that's fine with me. It could just get a little bit strange, I think, because I've yet to fully process it. Well, I could just say that over the past 2 or 3 years, my capabilities of what I can do every day, just mentally and physically, like the sheer number of hours I can work and how okay I can be with that, has shifted dramatically. Because when I was a bit younger, I had this whole narrative of, well, I'm working full time and supporting myself and trying to make it as a writer. And there was kind of like a whole like woe is me thing, like, well, there's normal people who go home after their day job and they just fuck off and they just watch Netflix or whatever, and here I am like trying to do this thing, for like 4 hours that extra night, and like I'm constantly working, and the weekends I'm developing the craft as well. And I would kind of wear that as like this badge of exhaustion, and it was super toxic because I don't think there's any point in doing something like that if you're going to be miserable. And I still love to do it, but I just had this stupid narrative like I don't know, I deserve to feel bad for myself or something. And it was only until recently when I started really pushing my boundaries, like why would I be unhappy, or why would I be discontent working this number of hours if I actually believe in what I'm doing and I'm actually okay doing this and working these hours? Then I should just be happy and grateful that I have this strange intuition and this like almost feeling of vocation towards it, and just embrace it. You're in your early 20s, you're going to be working, like 16-hour days, and you're young. Deal with it. And so recently that's kind of been my thing, where I kind of just push aside those feelings of like, oh, I'm so tired, or like, oh, I'm like not handling this well. And So my litmus test for it has kind of just been like push until I break and then see if I can go a little bit further. And I definitely have days where I just take it too far. But lately, I think the thing for me is just trying to own the narrative. Like, if you're going to make a decision to do something and it's going to be difficult, you might as well enjoy it. So that's what I've been doing, and it's because I had years of like self-imposed misery and I thought I was really stupid. So in terms of balance, like I don't balance very well because I'm just extremely driven, and I will like push myself until I have a really bad day, and then I'll sleep that day off and then get up the next day, basically. So I'm not even keeled at all, which is why I'm a terrible person for this question. Like I don't have boundaries, right? Like I got up at 4 a.m. today, so it's like.
Well, I want to pick upon two things. What you said. One, own the narrative. I think that regardless of whether, and everybody's boundaries will vary, but I think what you said is owning the narrative. You is imperative for whatever you're going to try to do. If you're going to try, and I'm good at giving advice, not good at taking my own, because I am very much the same way. But I'm not going to pull the age card, but I am a little bit older, so I've had a lot of years of doing that exact same thing. But I'm going to. I'm sorry. I've done that, but because ever since I was 17, I had 2 jobs. I went to school full time while I was in college, and I had a full-time job and a part-time job. On top of that, there was an internship somewhere in there. I always worked 2 jobs, or I've always had a full-time job and a part-time job. Always. I've always was just below that brink, right? And many times I've gone over it. And I've gotten scolded because of that. But to your point, always owning that narrative, like that's your choice, the fact that you said, I'm going to own it and I'm going to enjoy it because this is what I want. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's not something you should do, because if it works for you, and what it sounds like is you're testing your limit of where that boundary is and saying, can I go farther? Because I want to, because I am extra motivated. And then you catch too far and then you sleep it off. What would not be a good thing is if you've gone over that and then keep going despite resting. I mean, I think everybody's going to have the way that they function, and to pull that age card, you maybe you are younger and can do that cycle more. I have kids, so therefore that whole work until I drop thing, you got to factor in, to younger kids into that mess where, you're always at a higher rate of burnout just starting off, whereas if you have, maybe you do, maybe you don't, more downtime or alone time where you can cut back quicker, and heal a little quicker so you can bounce back quicker than other people may or may not have. If that's something that your body knows, then that's something your body's going to keep going with, because that's what you know. I know I'm an overworking person, period. That is part of my personality. I can't stop that because I would go nuts. So I always have to have this constant, almost too much, and over the years I found out where that is. And, there are times where, it is, I had to meet a deadline, so I pushed myself. I had to do whatever. I'm a parent, so therefore pushing myself is that's just what's going to happen, and we're always constantly balancing what things we want to take on. But to your point, owning that narrative, regardless of whether you want to say, yes, I'm going to push, or no, I'm not, is fair. I don't think boundaries as a whole have to be from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. I am going to, and from 4 o'clock to whatever, I am going to, because shit don't work that way and life doesn't work that way. And I think that in and of itself sets you up for failure, because then you have the expectation that you can keep to something that, if you're not a scheduled person, you're not going to meet it anyway. There are individuals out there, myself included, that we are not routine people. I don't do the routine thing, but I will have my coffee every single morning because that's the routine. The routine is coffee, then this, then this, then this. Whether it's at 5 a.m. or 7 a.m., whether it lasts for an hour or 2 hours, depends on what I need at the moment. And I own that,
So you do more of rhythms.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. I constantly am making things like my goal for today is these things. And then, stuff happens and maybe sometimes I'll complete 2, maybe something happens, I'll complete 4. But then I can sit back and look and go, I completed 2 out of my 3 things. This is why. And I'm okay with that and then good or bad, I can say, well, at least this is what I did and go from there. So I think knowing yourself, and knowing what works for you and being aware of that and okay with that is probably the most important thing, because you can't make somebody stick to a schedule, especially now when a lot of people are working from home. There's a lot of advice out there that says stick to a schedule, do this, do this, do this, and I'm looking at it going, hell fuck no, I can't do that. I can't do this from 8 to 10 because what life does not work like that. My brain doesn't work like that. So for me, making 2 or 3 different goals for the day, not big ones, and realizing that what a realistic goal looks like for me based on my life. My life is different from yours, so my ability to handle stress is different, and planning those things out really helps. Especially if I know I'm going to write a really tough scene, let me build myself up to it. So what that means is, for me, I will do less the days before and less the days after because I know I'm going to be emotionally strained. So I've built that in. And like I said, that's taken years of failure to realize that that's just the way I work. So my advice then to you is just to own the way you work and wiggle room within that. Don't prescribe to any kind of, you should do this and you should do this, because everybody's advice is what works for them and it may not work for you. And that's okay. The object is to get what you need done. And if that's bouncing on your head for 5 hours in the morning, it's bouncing on your head for 5 hours in the morning. It's different for everybody. And I think that we often forget when we give advice that we think people should follow it. And because that's what advice is, but the advice is not this is what you should do. The advice is what to take out of it. And that, it's, for example, knowing where you are and being able to be okay with that wiggle room. I could tell you all day long to sit here and go, make a schedule and do this, but if it's not working for you, then my advice. So you shouldn't do that. But the goal out of that is not make the schedule. It's figure out what works for you and be accountable for that amount of time.
Absolutely. And I just kind of want to go off on this a little bit too, because I, in a past life, was a holistic health practitioner. And one of the really, really big things that we study and do and that we help our clients with and everything is stress management. And it's funny because I've seen this self-care revolution that's happening. And I feel a little bit bad sometimes because I look at people contributing to this conversation of self-care. And I think we've all become very confused about what self-care really looks like. And so I think for some people, they, which first of all, you cannot say what someone else's self-care is. I love that you said that, Kota, because you're absolutely right. We're all unique individuals. All of us process things differently, handle things differently, have different needs. But the definition of self-care from what I learned a very long time ago is habits that energize you. And so a lot of people, and I'm not going to slam on this because I know that for some people this really, and I've been in this state where I just need to shut off my brain for a little bit, and that really is truly what I need. But a lot of people are like, oh, I need self-care, so I'm going to watch some TV for 8 hours.
Right.
Yeah. That was my self-care because I just need a day off because I've been struggling lately. And the question that we always said to ask yourself is, at the end of that activity, how do you feel? Do you feel like you need to go take a nap, or do you come out of it with more creative energy, more juice to get life done, sort of thing?
Did it work?
Is no, I just burned 8 hours, but I was feeling really bad. Then the truth is that's not self-care. That's
then that
Quinn,
didn't work.
You kind of said I pushed myself too far and I needed a break. I needed a nap, I needed to sleep it off sort of thing, which is cool. But self-care is actually the habits that we use to maintain ourselves, to allow ourselves before we hit that wall. And so, yeah, so I don't know. It's just kind of one of my little pet peeves when people talk about self-care. Like, oh, I've been having a hard time, so I need to like back off. And Kota, you even talked about it too. I processed this really crazy thing. I did it the only way I knew how, which was to, you know, get everything out. And I couldn't write for 8 months. And that's not a bad thing either. Like, you can do that. But when we have these conversations about self-care and caring for our mental health, I think it's important to kind of include that in the conversation. Is what are these things that you want to pull into your life that give you creative energy, that allow you to show up more authentically on the page without needing to take an 8-month break, without needing to sleep for an entire day because I pushed myself too far.
Yeah, exactly.
And just knowing where those limits are. And for all of us, it's going to be different. Like, I remember I made kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment one time about like, oh yeah, self-care, take a bath. I hate baths. Like, and I've had times in my life where I'm really stressed out and I'm like, I'll take a bath because that's what people say to do. And I was always like, this stupid bath thing. I have a friend who's like, I have a bath every single night. And I had said it like, I feel like,
like it was gospel.
Like, oh, yeah, right?
Baths are shit.
No, seriously. But she said, she was like, that is my thing that I do every night. And she said, I can literally push myself to breaking because I know at the end of the night I'm going to have a bath, and that's my jam. I was like,
that's pretty amazing.
Wow. And it was just such a testament to me that exactly as you said, Kota, we are all different. We all have different things that energize us. We all have different things that unlock that peace that allows us to go back to the page, or back to our kids, or back to our jobs, or back to whatever it may be, and actually live a happy life and choose that happiness. Cool.
Yeah, and that is true. You know, that I'm glad you defined self-care, because we as a community always throw that around. You know, especially in social work, throw it around, you know, because we do deal with a lot of intense emotions, and it's like, you need a self-care day. You know, and I know a lot of social workers know what that word means. But sometimes we throw it around so much that we forget that not everybody may know exactly what the purpose of that is, you know, because for people, maybe it is that Netflix and chill day, and, you know, they feel better after that. I can't, because I just don't sit down. But like, so everybody has that one thing that does that, but if it's not doing it, then that's not self-care, and maybe either think about something else, or, you know, your definition of self-care isn't maybe as accurate or as doing what you need it to do.
Yeah. And I think for me sometimes too, I'm guilty of it. I've used self-care as an excuse to procrastinate.
Yes, that's where I was going with that.
I think part of my happiest and most accomplished and fulfilled spans of time in my life have been when I kind of just tighten things up a little bit, in the sense that discipline is kind of one of the highest forms of self-love you can give. Because if you're disciplined enough to get done what you need to do, or accept that you fell short that day but still get the sleep you need, or still do the exercise that you need to feel good, or you discipline yourself to not eat foods that are going to contribute to poor moods, or whatever small tweaks there are, like, that will make you feel better in the long run than for me, than like having a day where you watch Netflix or you play video games. Because for me, those things represent like escapism. And so if I find myself really drawn to distraction, it's not because I need time to relax, or maybe it is, but I think the root of the problem is, why do I feel drawn to that distraction in the first place? Why am I like unhappy with my present moment that I can't just do the things that I love? And that pains me. And so figuring that out is kind of figuring out where's the discipline that needs to be applied to certain areas of my life, so that I'm not this person that feels the need to watch Netflix for 3 hours, feels the need to play video games for 8 hours. You know, where's the discipline that comes in where I remember this very kind of almost like sacred joy in creating and pursuing myself and the things that I love. And of course there's going to be those days where we're human. We're not gods. You know, it's going to be days where you just do fuck all, and that's part of the joy of being human. That's great. But I think even in those times of relaxation, there's varying degrees of like quality. You know, I think we can think about how it could be a little bit more wholesome to like kind of take a walk in a natural area for an hour rather than watch some action movie or something like that. You know, and again, everything is different for everyone, but I think those little moments, those little habits matter so much. And it's been huge for me to kind of just take a step back and try to really just fine tune as much as I can.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight.
No, that's lifetimes.
You know, and that's also another thing that, you know, we all kind of have to accept. You're going to have good days and bad days, and some days that will work and some days that will not, and we just change and adjust as the time goes. Just like our mental health is not stagnant either. You know, it changes, or at least mine has. It's changed over time, you know, different, you know, I crack open something different, now I have a different trigger. This one doesn't bother me today, but that one does, you know. And just knowing that, you know, I didn't know any of my triggers until I just knew they were triggers. I didn't know why. They're just triggers. So then as they came and went, you know, the different coping things and the different little moments that I had to use to bring myself back varied, you know. And you know, to your point where, you know, Quinn, where you just keep focusing on those, and you know, you do keep focusing on those and but also being okay when you have to readjust again. And it could be frustrating to have to always constantly readjust, you know. It's like, but that worked last week, why can't this work? I am burnt out and I need something, and all of my top 3 coping skills are not working. You know, and being okay with saying, well, fuck, that's not working, and go and moving on to something else, or being able to try something different. And then, you know, like I say, saying, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna do whatever the hell I want because nothing's working, you know.
I don't remember which question it saying something about that before in the brainstorming sessions, and I think that's really pertinent to the conversation we're having right now.
What did we say in the brainstorming sessions? Repeat that. There was a bit of a skip.
Sorry. Yeah. So I just remember on the brainstorming document, you had started talking about self-talk a little bit.
Oh,
I think now would be a great time for you to talk about that.
That's so natural. It's completely natural. I even thought about that as well. I think it was kind of what you were illustrating, Kota, with those moments of, well, this isn't working. And it's so frustrating because it feels like, you know, 2 steps backwards, 1 step forward all the time. Or certain moments in our life where, okay, maybe I was doing this routine really well for a few weeks and I felt great about that. And now all of a sudden, where's the satisfaction? Like, where's the dopamine? What's going on? And that, for me, those are always the moments where I am so prone to just be like, to have some of those like toxic self-talk, or those are the moments where I'm very self-critical. Like, your head's not even working. You're a freak. Nothing's working for you. Like, you can't even feel good after you run for a mile or something. Like, it's just that where there's language in our head of just, I'm a failure, or I'm fake,
stupid,
or I'm stupid. That was the kind of thing where in my darkest years where I was very suicidal, and it was because of those thoughts, and because I thought those thoughts were dynamite. I thought it was great that I was being self-critical, because I thought, this is great, this is going to make me a better person because I'm constantly trying to be better, and because I think lowly of myself, that means I'm going to work harder and try to get better. I'll constantly be super humble and not value myself, so I'll always try to be better. And it just, for me, it just does not work like that. You have to have your own back. You have to be your best friend. You have to be the person at the end of the day who's honest enough to say, maybe I'm disappointed with myself, but tomorrow we can try again. And just have that even-keeled perspective. And being able to celebrate ourselves is huge. And it like burns me up more than anything to see artists of any medium have imposter syndrome, especially when they're working as hard as they are, or anybody. just like people who are talented and inspired and passionate, and just like a lot of people, they get up and they get after it. And after all that effort, at the end of the day, they don't think a lot of themselves. It's heartbreaking. And they're for two reasons. One, because it's just not helping them. And two, because they're not going to, I think it sucks some of the joy of just living out of it. Because you're being this amazing person who's trying as hard as they can. And at the end of these long days and weeks and months and years, not being able to fully celebrate and look back and just be proud of just being human and going through all of that suffering and overcoming so much of it. That's huge. And it breaks my heart to see that. And I think just wherever we can, just like there's little habits, there's just little moments throughout the day where you'll have this urge to call yourself stupid, or you'll have this urge to say that you don't have the right to do something, or that you don't have the time or the energy or the wits. And I think it's just really poisonous, and I think it's not talked about enough in an effective way. It's more pernicious than I think it's made out to be.
Yeah.
And I think as writers too, we do have a unique struggle, because no matter what path to publishing you pursue, if you're pursuing publishing in any stripe, it seems like there are certain markers of success, like I have an agent, I do not have an agent. Mm-hmm. I have a publishing deal, I don't have a publishing deal. I hit #1 in my category on the self-publishing charts. I have a self-published book, still working on mine. Like we have all these different labels, and we rely so much on external validation in our profession. Mm-hmm. That is the only way you make money in this profession, is to have someone else look at something you've created and say that is worthy. And especially when you really analyze it, most of that is actually even marketing. It's not even actually how skillfully you put stuff down on the page.
Right.
It's who has even heard of you, and have they picked up your book and read it. So I think that's really valid. And I think so many of the conversations we're having today are where balance is hard, right? So it's like, where do I stop tearing apart, because I'm pursuing traditional publishing, and where do I stop tearing apart my first 10 pages and say, I'm being too critical of myself, and when do I say, no, I need to push harder? So yeah, I really resonated with what you said about when you were younger, because I've done that a lot too, where I'm like, no, if I'm harder on myself, I'll succeed more, because I can see the flaws. And I think sometimes I get into a space where I'm looking so hard that even in revisions, I'm fixing things that don't need to be fixed, fixing things that I'm just playing forever because I'm seeking out that perfection, which
you're never going to reach anyway, because there is nothing. Art is not perfection, because it is art.
Absolutely. And I think what I've found too, because I read extensively for other people as well, and the passages that have resonated the most with me, to be honest, are just vulnerable emotional spaces. And I think that when we can protect ourselves emotionally, mentally, and as you said, be our own best friends and coach ourselves through that and allow ourselves to really show up, I think that's what connects readers. That's what builds that empathy. That I love what Stephen King says about, I can't remember the exact quote, I suck at stuff like that, but writing is telepathy. And, that I can actually put something down and put it anywhere in the world, and someone else can see what I see and think what I think. And I think that's so strong and so important, that what we're putting out there telepathically into other people's brains is something that is going to be of benefit and of worth emotionally. And really, if I'm super critical about what word I put where, at the end of the day, is that really, where I wanted to succeed? Or is it that I maybe need to strip away some of that, let myself be more raw?
I've had that experience too. I had some books that had been professionally edited, and I would meet with the editor every week or so and kind of go over some chapters. And a lot of the stuff that she was kind of guiding me and helping me cut it down a little bit. And a lot of the stuff where I would intuitively be like, this seems like fluff. Like this was kind of more just me. This wasn't the story. This was not the characters. This was more just kind of me. Those are the things where we would go into meetings and like 8 times out of 10, she'd be like, oh no, you keep this part right here. You find adverbs or you find something else to cut out. Like you keep that part where you were just being genuine and not like just talking through the characters where you were just being a little bit more you. And I think people just have that intuition. You know, they sense this was somebody recounting something difficult and true, and it's that feeling of somebody said something that you didn't know you knew, and you read it and you think, oh, I knew that, and maybe it even almost feels like you knew it like in a past life or something. It's just this weird esoteric feeling of like, oh, I totally knew that, but you just reminded me, and I'd never thought of that before, and that feeling that's what makes, you know, writing magic. It's that shared experience. It's amazing.
Definitely, you know, and I think to that point, it's finding your voice, you know, as a writer, and not being afraid to own that, you know, because we sit there and we pick apart those words and we pick apart that, but you know, Quinn, to what you said, those genuine parts, like that's your voice as a person, and that's you telling that story, and you know, that editor picked those things out because that's where the parts that we're resonating against, you know, and they would resonate with other people as well. And you know, I think when I don't want to say tried too hard, but when we try too hard to find the right word, because you know, we are stressed that every word matters, you know, like even think of our Twitter posts, you know, they're 190 characters or whatever, you know, every word has to matter. But then again, it also doesn't, because if I nitpick over my words, then have I lost my voice? You know, have I lost that ability to connect with other people? You know, and that, and even you can relate it to self-talk. Our self-talk is just our negative voice, you know, and good friends and good people will be able to kind of see that too, to kind of go also in a different direction, but that voice there is what will resonate both to, you know, within a story and within us as a person, to kind of connect with other people, you know. So it's also a good thing to connect our voice with other people, and when we do that, we can make those relationships and things like that also become our support systems that combat that negative self-talk, you know, because I do it all the time, and Sam, as we were talking about before, every time I inject that negative self-talk voice into my own language, wherever it is, you know, and he's like, no, you say thank you, I gave you a goddamn compliment. So you know, because, you know, I'll let it slip out, you know, it slips out in my voice, it slips out in my writing, it slips out, you know, everywhere. You know, so when you start to pick apart those things, it's good to have other individuals who look like you're picking yourself apart again. Stop it. You know, to kind of, you get to know your self-talk and your negative self-talk, your voice, and others will too.
Absolutely. I have so many more things that I want to talk to you guys about, but we are like 3 minutes off of time, and I feel like if I say anything else, it's just going to open another can of worms. It has been really, really good chatting with you, and I want to second what Kotas said, just with building up that support network, that writing can be lonely. We think of writing as a thing we do by ourselves at a desk with a computer, wherever you are, sort of thing, writing, and that it's just me and the page. But for me, I've found the most joy in my writing in collaboration, in working with, you know, readers, friends, reporters, other writers, being able to have somebody to talk through, you know, queer rejection piles. That's emotionally hard on anybody. You know, you throw a mental health challenge on top of that, and it can be devastating. But to have those people that have your back, like Sam has with you, Kota, and be able to say, you know, to believe in you and to push you, and to be that friendly voice sometimes when our friendly voices aren't coming through our own heads. yeah, that can be a really cool thing. And I think that's what's awesome about the conference as well, is that it's going to bring writers together. And that's been completely invaluable in my life, is having other people to connect with over this unique journey we have chosen for ourselves. So thanks so much for your time. We are going to have this is pre-recorded, but we're going to pop on in a moment and have live questions and answers. So you guys feel free to prepare those, and we'll get to them.
Awesome. It's been fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
So good.